Hello and blessings to you. In this video, we'll go over chapter 17, which is the reversing vav. So I meant to tell you all about this um, on last Thursday of class, but I was just kind of frazzled and forgot to mention this. But some of you have already encountered this in your translation for the forum post, and so I've left a couple descriptions there talking about this. But before we get into this, it's been a while that we've met at least. Hopefully it's not been a while that you've been translating Hebrew. But I wanted to take this time to go over some of these oral review exercises. So first we have Katavta et hadevarim al ha-sha'ar. So this is, you will write the words upon the gate. Okay? Katavta otam alav. So you will write them upon it. Okay, next one. Nikach et ha-behema el haharim. We will take the animal to the mountains. Nechak ota elehem. We will take it or her to them. Okay, hopefully this kind of refreshes your memory on our pronominal suffixes in particular, but as well as perfect verbs, imperfect verbs, vocabulary, stuff like that. Well, let's jump into vocabulary. Okay, some of these might be a little tricky, so let's go over them carefully. Okay, so here we have chai, chaya, chayim, chayot. Okay, this is alive or living, and you can see it's an adjective. And I'll say what this is most tricky with is it looks a lot like our to be verb. Okay, like haya, but instead chaya. So this one in particular right here. So keep that in mind. If this is a chet instead of a hey, then we're looking at the adjective for living or alive. Okay? Now similar to that adjective, here is the noun of it. So chayim or chaye. So this is life. And you can see how these words are related. Kain means thus or so. And there's some idioms down here that we'll look at about this word in particular. Mea, meot, meat means 100. So here's our first number, or no, actually we've had achad, haven't we? But so now we have, so that was 1, now we have 100. Mea. Mizbeach. Notice this is a furtive patak, it's pronounced before the chet here. Mizbeach. Mizbechot. Mizbach. So notice there is quite a difference between the word pair form and the regular form. Mizbach. It's the tsere right here that actually drops out and the patak moves over. Malak, malakim, malak, malake means messenger or angel. And notice it is related to the word for king. It's kind of one sent by the king. It's kind of that sense of this. At least that's how I remember it. So, okay, this next one, ayin, noon, hey, ana, is our word for answer or reply. So you'll see this a lot in dialogue along with Amar, so he said, and then maybe someone else replied. Okay, next we have 8. 8 means time. Now this could be tricky, possibly, to be confused with our direct object marker et, or even et meaning with. But notice those have a aleph, and this one instead has an ayin. So this ayin is what signifies to us this is the word for time in particular. Okay. Similarly, this next word, ata, means now, and perhaps you can relate it to time, because now is kind of a description of time. But this, at least to me, has been sometimes tricky, confusing with ata, meaning you. So again, the difference will be this aleph instead of an ayin. So ata would be spelled probably like this. So ata, you, looks different from ata now. Notice the vowels are the same, everything's the same except this ayin and this aleph. Okay? So keep those differentiated somehow by recognizing this ayin. Okay? So ata, now. Pe, p, this is the word for mouth. Kodesh, kodeshim, notice this is a kametz hatuf here, so it's still pronounced as an O, kodeshim. Kodesh, kodeshe, or sorry, really, kodshe. Okay, and this is holiness, something that is holy. It's a noun, so this isn't quite the same as our adjective for holy, although it will be built off the same root. But so if you see this alone, it could just be holiness, or maybe it's a holy thing. If you attach these words, so maybe we have Kodesh, Kodeshim, or really Kodesh HaKodeshim would be the Holy of Holies. Okay? So that's saying that it's something that's really holy is kind of how Hebrew functions. The next one, the last one, is Shana, Shanim, Shanat, Shane. This is our word for year. Something that helped me remember this, not sure if it will help you, is I knew somebody named Shayna, and that just helped me associate this with year for some reason. I don't know. But I like names, and names helped me remember these sort of words. Okay. One funny thing that we should mention really fast about me'ah, 100, is that in either form, it can be followed by either a singular or plural noun. So it kind of breaks a few rules by that. So this will be 100 years, me'ah shana, 100 year, literally, but 100 years in English. Me'ah shanim, so there, this kind of looks more right to us, 100 years, plural, or me'at shana, 100 year, literally, but still will translate 100 years. So kind of confusing, but just something to tuck away in the back of your mind, that it does not, whatever follows 100 does not have to be plural, but in English we'll still probably translate it as plural. Okay? Now, let's see. The author is just wanting you to know that ayin, nun, hey follows the same patterns as other verbs that end in hey. So probably could have guessed that because it ends in hey, but if not, here it is spelled out. Okay. We already talked about kodeshim and this kametz hatuf here, and kodshe as well, kametz hatuf. Now let's talk about some idioms here. It looks like we've already covered Holy of Holies. Here we have all Cain, literally upon thus, will translate as therefore, and then acharei Cain, after thus, or following thus, we'll say afterwards. Okay, so keep those in mind. And now we're getting to the fun stuff. So some of you are not going to like this chapter because it further throws things a little afield from maybe more technical rules that you can rely on. But some of you might appreciate the freedom that this kind of gives you in your translations. So let's get into this. So, of course, vav is our conjunction. Typically, we might translate it as and. It could, I'm not sure what definition the book has actually given you, but it could be and, even, also, namely, but, and all sorts of other things. Typically, though, we can just translate as and. So, for example, David v'Yosef yashvu. David and Joseph sat or resided or something. Okay? But when vav comes before a perfect or imperfect verb, so this does not count for participles or other forms that you have not learned up to this point. So participles, commands, things like that, cannot be reversed with a vav. But the perfect or imperfect tense can. Okay? And so what this means is if a reversing vav is what the book calls it, you might also hear it as a vav conversive, so converse, opposite, reverse, kind of the same idea, opposite. When this is prefixed to a verb in the perfect or imperfect, in the perfect, it will switch the verb to imperfect, okay? And likewise, in the imperfect, it will switch the verb to the perfect. All right, so let's get into some examples of what this looks like, okay? Oh, one thing I should also say is this is not always the case. So our favorite word that all of us should just be resoundingly familiar with is context. So by context, you'll be able to determine whether the form of the verb is supposed to be in the perfect or the imperfect. And as your passages in the forum kind of pointed out to you, it is actually kind of obvious by the context. So if every verb up to this point has been in the perfect and the whole story is a past story, then of course, if we find a reversing vav with an imperfect verb, it's going to be a switch to the perfect. So take heart that it's not as confusing as it sounds, and it really does just give you greater flexibility in your translations. Just remember, this is a different language, these people thought in different ways, and this is one of those differences. So, oh, one last thing before we get to these examples. When it's acting as a reversing vav or vav conversive, it may or may not be translated as and. Okay? So, so keep that in mind. And in this regard, we're getting closer to kind of what I've been telling us about, that this vav often serves as punctuation in stories. And so in English, at least with your initial translation, it might be easier to go ahead and throw in the and. So, and he sat, and he stood up, and he went out, and he walked along the road. So, I mean, that still makes sense in English, right? Well, let's get into these examples. So here we have Shamru b'nei Yisrael et haTorah. So they kept, the children of Israel, the Torah. So the children of Israel kept the Torah. Okay? Now, we might say Vashamru b'nei Yisrael et haTorah. So literally, we might say, and the children of Israel will keep the Torah, if this is in fact a reversed vav. Now, of course, we could have several different ways of this. So I could just translate this, and the children of Israel kept the Torah. That could work still. Maybe it's not a reversing vav. And the children of Israel will keep the Torah. That also works. Or I could drop the and just say, the children of Israel will keep the Torah. So all of those are possibilities for this. And I say all, it's only 3, but and one of them is just whether or not you keep the and. So now obviously if this is not a reversing vav, I do not have the option to just take it off and just say the children of Israel kept the Torah, like this first sentence. I have to do something with the vav. Well, let's look at these other examples. Ahavta et ha'isha hazot. Okay, so you loved the woman, this one. So you loved this woman. Okay, now one thing I didn't point out up there, so I'll point out up here. Va'ahavta et ha'isha hazot. Notice every letter is the exact same except for this vav at the beginning. And it flips the meaning. Well, I should rather say it can flip the meaning. So va'ahavta et ha'isha hazot could be, and you will love this woman. So it's switching from perfect to imperfect. And again, we have some options with that still. So let's go to the last set. Matzah David et hazahav. So he found, David, the gold. So David found the gold. Umatzah David et hazahav. And David will find the gold. Okay. So those are all our perfect examples. Let's see, we can do the same thing with the imperfect. So Yishmru b'nei Yisrael et haTorah. So it looks like we even have the same example as up here. So the children of Israel, they will keep the Torah. Okay, but with just a vav on there, we can now have the children of Israel kept the Torah. Or, and the children of Israel kept the Torah. Okay, next one. Tizkor et bincha. So you will remember your son. V'tizkor et bincha. And you remembered your son. Okay, notice all the letters again are the same, just the vav flips the meaning from the perfect to, or the imperfect to the perfect in this case. Yishvot hachoen et amo. So he will judge, the priest, his people. So the priest will judge his people. Vayishvot hakohen et amo. So the priest judged his people, and the priest judged his people. Okay. This last note we've already talked about. In the Bible, there are times where a vav precedes the verb, but it does not reverse the tense. So you can have this, and it's not a reversing vav. So in that case, this last line will be the priest will judge his people. That still works. Luckily though for you, in this textbook, any vav that precedes a verb in the perfect or the imperfect will be a reversing vav. So at least for the textbook, you'll be okay. But just realize jumping into the biblical text, it's a little more fluid, a little more flexible. Okay? This next section just kind of goes through a tangible example of the verb shamar. Okay? What the reversing vav looks like when it precedes every form of that verb in the perfect and imperfect of the pa'al pattern, the cow pattern. And so in the perfect, you'll notice that there's either a vav with a shava right here or a shurek. Okay, so notice most of them are this vav with the shava, and just these two forms right here, the plural you forms, will have a shurek. For the most part, most of the other letters will not change because of that, and except these two forms, because of the shurek, will become ush here, and this will drop its a sound, and this will be a silent shava. But in going through this, I don't need you to memorize these forms. I don't need you to do anything like that. Just be familiar with all of this and the spellings that vav can take, I guess. Last thing is the imperfect will be a vav with a patak, unless it's before the aleph, so our first person singular will have a comment instead. Again, I don't really need you to memorize all of these things, just more be able to translate them when you see them. Okay, so let's go through these and we'll see these differences. So shamarti, vashamarti. Okay, so I guarded, I will guard. Shamarta, vashamarta. I guarded, I will guard. Or sorry, I don't know what I'm thinking. Oh, you heard what I did. You guarded and you will guard. Shamart, vashamart. You guarded, you will guard. Shamar, vashamar. He guarded, he will guard. Shamra, vashamra. She guarded, she will guard. Shamarnu, vashamarnu. We guarded, we will guard. Shamartim, ushmartim. You guarded, you will guard, plural. Shamartin, ushmartin. You guarded, you will guard, again plural, the feminine one. Shamru, vashamru. They guarded, they will guard. So, I mean, pretty straightforward. Hopefully you're tracking with all of these. I don't think I'm going too fast, but if I am, you can ask me about it in class. Eshmor, va-eshmor. So again, you can see pretty much the same. I will guard, I guarded. Tishmor, va-tishmor. You will guard, you guarded. Tishmri, va-tishmri. You will guard, you guarded. Yishmor, va-yishmor. He will guard, he guarded. Tishmor, va-tishmor. She will guard, she guarded. Nishmor, va-nishmor. We will guard, we guarded. Tishmru, va-tishmru. You will guard, you guarded. Tishmorna, va-tishmorna. You will guard, you guarded. Yishmru, va-yishmru. They will guard, they guarded. Tishmorna, va-tishmorna. They will guard, they guarded. I mean, I think this is fairly straightforward, but if you have any questions about the forms of the vav conversive, of course, ask me them in class. Write it down, make sure you don't forget. But basically, you can see in almost all of these, you're just adding a vav at the beginning and nothing else changes, except it does flip the meaning from the perfect to the imperfect or the imperfect to the perfect, depending on what the original form was. Okay? So this is kind of the first major part of this chapter. The next thing is talking about clipped verb forms. Okay, so this isn't necessarily an irregular verb pattern, such as like our third hey dropping off, because we might see both forms. Okay, now these forms especially happen when used with the reversing vav, and let me be a little more explicit with these. So when the third root letter is a hey, that hey can be clipped off, especially when used with the reversing vav. Okay? And when that happens, there's often going to be vowel changes to the rest of the word. And typically, these are going to be imperfect tenses of these words that this will happen to. And the most common specifically is going to be the third masculine singular. So like our who, he. Um, so let me see if there's anything else in this that we should bring out. Okay, well, so let's kind of look at what this will actually turn into. And so this isn't like a verb pattern because both of these are options, okay? It's just if you see this, I need you to be able to recognize it and know what's happening, okay? Specifically, with all of these, the hey of the third root letter drops off sometimes, and especially so if used with the reversing vav, okay? So here we have yihya, so it will be, he will be, vayahi, so, and it was. So notice it's reversed because of the vav, so past tense. So it was, or you could say came to pass, or existed, or became, something like that. It's our to be verb, so it has all of that meaning. But notice, so these are technically the same verbal form. It's just this one is clipped and has the vav, the reversing vav at the beginning. Okay, next one, yire. So he will see becomes vayare, and he saw. So notice that the shagol and the hey drops off here. Ya'ase becomes vaya'as. So he will do becomes and he did. And this last hey drops off with the shagol. Ya'ale, he will go up or ascend, becomes vaya'al, and he went up. Now notice some of these can be especially confusing because you might identify all as our preposition. So, but when you see this vav and this yod, you know something else must be going on because prepositions don't take a yod in front of them. But still, it's kind of confusing, right? So, I'll probably say this a few times, but definitely be familiar with everything in this column, okay? And kind of be able to trace it back to this column, really just by adding that hey at the end and maybe a vowel if it's missing. So here's our verb from this chapter. Ya'ane, he will answer, becomes vaya'an, and he answered. Haita, it was or she was. Vatahi, and it was and she was. Anta, she answered. Vata'an, and she answered. So, really, I think this is probably one of the hardest sections in this chapter, okay? Because this can happen in the perfect or the imperfect, okay? And it can happen with a reversing vav or without a reversing vav. Okay, now most frequently, it will be the imperfect, it will be a reversing vav, and even it will be the 3ms form, okay? But none of those are guaranteed for us. So let's kind of look at some examples of how this plays out. So, Yihya shalom ba'aretz hahi. So, there will be peace in the land, the it, so that land. So, there will be peace in that land. Vayahi shalom ba'aretz hahi. And there was peace in that land. Okay. I'm just looking over here for a second, and I actually disagree with this translation. And it came to pass there was peace in that land. They're kind of interpreting our verb twice. So it came to pass. You could say that with our to be verb. I mean, I think it's a little bit of taking liberties, but it still works. But it came to pass kind of repeats the idea of there was. So remember our to be verb can be there was, so we could say, and there was peace in the land. That works. You could also from this say, and peace was in the land, that land. That'd probably be, well, I mean, all of those work, but here they're supplying our verb twice to us, and I don't think that we could really do that, so we'll just move on though. Yireh Yosef et Aviv. Vayireh Yosef et Aviv. Okay, so this first one, Joseph will see his father. And Joseph saw his father. So notice these are technically the same forms, but this one is clipped down here. This hey is gone. Okay. Ya'aseh hamelech milchama v'ya'as hamelech milchama. So the king will make war. And the king made war. Both of those have notice everything is the same except for the vav. Okay. Like I said earlier, you don't always have to have the reversing vav though, and some examples of that are Yehi Cain, so it will be thus, literally, or there will be thus, but we might say may it be so. Kind of makes more sense of that idea in English. And again, Yehi, so it will be, or may it be. Notice we would expect this. Yihya. So this we could also say may it be. But here we have the clipped form, so that last hey is gone. Okay, some special things that happen with the amar verb when it takes a reversing vav in the imperfect, some of the vowels change. Okay, so here we have yomar, so he will say, vayomer, and he said. So notice that this patak turns into shigol is basically just what happens. So when that happens, don't be confused. So tomar, vatomer, and she said. Okay. Quick examples of that. Yomar David shalom, David said peace. Vayomer David shalom, and David said peace. Oh, I'm sorry, this first one, I think I translated it in the perfect tense. Of course, this is the imperfect tense, Yomar. So David will say peace. Okay. Last section is some of our guttural imperfect verbs. So we've talked about gutturals in the perfect, but not yet in the imperfect. So this is kind of an irregular type pattern. The gutturals, they cause different vowels in the imperfect tense. And so it's going to go through our verbs that have gutturals and kind of just list those out for you. Let's see. Yeah, I'll pull this out for you. You don't have to memorize these, just be able to identify what's going on with them. So here, I don't think I'm going to go through all of these, but I'll go through some of them. So we'll start over here just because beginning is a good place to start. So e'avod, or sorry, e'avor, ta'avor. So I will cross over, you will cross over. Ta'avri, you will cross over, feminine. Ya'avor, he will cross over. Ta'avor, she will cross over. Na'avor, we will cross over. Ta'avru, you will cross over, masculine plural. Ta'avorna, you will cross over, feminine plural. Ya'avru, they will cross over. Ta'avorna, they will cross over. Okay, and I think I misspoke. I didn't mean to say that this was an irregular verbal pattern with the gutturals. It's just the vowels are different. So if you remember your signal letters, it looks like nothing really is dropping out of here either. So if you remember your signal letters, you can identify the verb, and everything should still be fine. So really, the only difference here is the vowel pattern is different. Okay? For that reason, I'm not going to go through all of these, and I think we'll just call it quits here. So blessings to you. Have a great day.